Eyo and I are incredibly humbled, pleased, surprised, still bewildered to be joined by industry writers, co-creators, evil geniuses, Mickey Down and Konrad Kay. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. Welcome to the unofficial, official Robert Spearing fan club. This is this is where we all meet every week. So welcome.
Pleasure, guys. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to be joining you guys. We absolutely love listening to you guys talk about the show. So
Oh,
we're very happy to be here.
thank you so much. So first of all, holy shit, this was a very depressing episode, and so thank you for that. That was it was very cheerful to watch. But I think before I want to push that maybe to the end. So before we get into episode 5, which we're talking about this week, we want to just have some general questions which Ayo and I have kind of discussed both on air and off air. So obviously, if you guys can, we'll be gracious enough to
Sure.
answer them. I think first of all, just like we're more than halfway through this season, so congratulations! I know that first of all because I think it's not just our echo chamber. I think everyone is loving this season, fans, critics. So I guess first of all, just congratulations, well done on an incredible season so far. Um, is that something you guys look at? Fan perception, critical perception? Or are you just focused on telling the story you want to tell?
Thank you, by the way. I'm really glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad that you were depressed after watching episode 5. That was the intention. The
Okay, that's good.
fan feedback. I mean, we do check it out. We do read it. We love. I love people that are compelled by the show. I love people engaging with it in any way they want, even if they're saying how much they hate it. I think that's a successful
Mhm.
show. Um, I yeah, we do. Obviously it's lovely to hear people say they like the show. It's lovely to get critical praise, but we don't try and let it affect us too much. Like there are things that things that we brought to the fore in between seasons 1 and 2, which I think they tallied with things that people liked, like more Eric and Harper, that relationship, more Eric in general, delving deeper into
Mhm.
the characters. All that stuff is stuff that people said that they were craving after season 1, but it's just stuff that you end up doing actually when you go from season 1 to season 2. So yeah, I mean, I'm sort of morbidly curious by the Reddit subreddit, which I check out sometimes, and I love seeing people slagging off the show and also in equal measure saying how much they like it. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to ignore that sort of stuff, but I don't think I really don't let it affect us too much.
Mhm.
The show's also, I mean, you guys probably know this because you're fans, but the show is, I mean, me and Mickey pride ourselves on how dense it is and how detailed it is. And so one thing that is thrilling is from that Reddit or from Twitter or is when people pick up on things that, me and Mickey put in either as a kind of a little tiny character moment or like, a good example from episode 3 is, the cover of Greg's book,
Yeah.
like people saying like, oh, what's his novel about, like what's the title mean and all this sort of stuff, like all of that. We pride ourselves in making sure that every thing that ends up on screen, every frame has something to say about either the characters or the story. So watching people engage with it on that level is for me one of the most satisfying parts of watching it come out into the
That's
world.
my favorite
Yeah.
bit, actually. Like when people sort of not overanalyze, because that's the wrong word, analyze or delve into the minutiae of it. I think that's the best kind of fan reaction, because it's stuff
Mhm.
that sometimes me and Conrad just put in there to make each other laugh. The background ADR, for example, like people picking up on what Ricci's saying, and then loads of comments about it, and like I saw in the subreddit people talking, that scene of Charles from episode 3 where he stands up and he's got that bulge in his pants, and I feel like
Mhm.
there's like dozens of people debating that, which I kind
I
of
think, I think we had a whole wormhole about that on the
We
podcast. We
had
had to
at
edit that down. It's
least
like, what
7
is happening?
minutes.
It's interesting that you bring up Greg's book, and obviously, not an exit gets published this season. So, I don't know. Is that a bit of wish fulfillment from you guys about a certain spec script that was never fully made? Is that?
um that I mean, we wanted to give Greg a fitting tribute in this season, and it's maybe it is a bit of wish fulfillment. It is possible to leave this business and be successful in something else.
True,
It's kind of
true.
what we're saying.
Yeah, you can attest to that. Um, so I mean, yeah, I think I wanted to talk about some of the additions you made this season, especially behind the camera. First of all, shout out to Caleb Femi who directed episode 5. is Nigerian. We're Nigerian. We have to shout him out. But I'm very interested in 3 other additions you guys made, especially as this season took on a larger female perspective. So, can you please talk about the additions of Jamie O'Brien, Bikita Stemusa, and Isabella Eklof, and how they were the right people to help you tell these stories?
Well, I mean, Jamie, I can speak about them all individually quickly. I mean, Jamie joined the project between seasons 1 and 2. She's a very experienced writer with a hell of a lot. She's run her own show. She's also been in numerous writers' rooms. She was very good at giving me and Mickey a kind of more strict American model in terms of a writer's room to follow. And she was a very good interrogate. She allowed our imaginations to run wild because the show is a lot of kind of me and Mickey's, I would say, just a kind of fit of creative energy, but she gave us far more of a rigid structure in terms of how to tell the story, a more disciplined story engine, better week-to-week hooks between the episodes, all of the things which, on some level might be quite, expected, but actually me and Mickey had kind of not disregarded, but I think maybe because we were young writers, we were kind of like, oh, we can do this kind of thing where we can be a bit iconoclastic and do something a bit punk rock, and the rules don't really apply to us. And she just came in and said, guys, you have a potentially very good show here, but you need to start following some of the harder and faster rules of television storytelling. And I think, she, forget that part of the process. She was just a brilliant person to have around the show because her energy was so positive. She was, an amazing leader, incredibly good with the actors, and just like a very good foil for me and Mickey in many ways. And then, Brigitte and Isabella, both very different directors in some level, but both very underneath the scripts, both very engaged with me and Mickey. And, both, I think, the female perspective on the show is very important because, me and Mickey, obviously, on the co-leads in some ways, we have 4 lead characters, but the 2 female co-leads are very strong and they have a very strong flavor. And I think people think they're very distinctively written women on television. And it's important that the input into those characters comes from the 2 women playing them and the sort of the kind of female creative hand behind it as much as it does mine and Mickey, because then you get a sort of something that feels like it approximates truth if everybody's feeding in and it's very collaborative, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you can tell that there's a lot more confidence this season in just in the storytelling. I think Eyo and I spoke about, I think, what happened in episode 2, episode 3, just like there's a stronger plot going on this season. And obviously we loved season 1 because of the hey, let's come in and check in what these characters are doing this week and what's happening this week. Is it the Christmas party? Is Greg gonna run into the glass door? But this season you feel like, and I guess maybe these things are traditional story structures for a reason. Like you feel like it's still the industry of season 1, which is your brainchild, but now it's kind of working at a different level. So yeah, I mean, I think we're fans, definitely.
Yeah.
No, that's great to hear. It was hard because I think Mickey and I had so many ideas in season 1, and it's almost like we needed to formalize it to make the show. We didn't realize how dense we could make the show and how enjoyable and how much we could fit into an hour if we were following a bit more of a kind of specific traditional storytelling. If the skeleton of the show was stronger, we could do all the things that we love to do, which is the dialogue and the character and the weird perverse stuff and the sex and the drugs and all that stuff.
It also just more stuff happens. It's just we're just like we fit more into an hour. The episodes are longer as well. Some of the episodes in season 1 are 45 minutes, and we go up to like 57 minutes in this season. It just feels like we had a lot more to say this time, and we were given the benefit to do it by HBO. So we thought, okay, we've got to throw everything at the wall. Like we have to make this one count. And I'm glad that people are responding to it, because me and Konrad had this joke, which is like, we love this season. We've worked so hard on it. We've thrown everything on the wall. It'd be really funny if we just brought it out and everyone was like, meh.
No.
It's worse than season 1. That was the fear.
The other thing to think about is the fact that the themes of the show really revealed themselves to us having made the first season. So like we made it, we wrote the characters, then it's almost like it comes into the world, you see what people pick up on, And obviously there are conscious and unconscious parts of writing, but then we were like, we had all of the kind of the ingredients going into the season 2 writers room and saying like, actually the show is about these, I mean, I won't list them because I think it makes it too reductive, but like
Mhm.
they're about 5 things, and we're going to write about these 5 things through the prism of these characters. And I think, it's nice and very satisfying, because when people engage with it and talk about it like you guys do, or write about it, they are picking up on a lot of the stuff that me and Mickey were talking about with the writers at the earliest stage in the writers room thematically. And like, I think that's what gives the show, I think it has an extra layer to it now because we were able to do that between seasons 1 and 2.
It's funny as well that one of our producers, the CEO of the studio that makes the show, Jane Tranter, she said when we were writing season 1, don't be afraid to actually say in dialogue and on page what the show is about. And we buried it. We buried it massively. We made lots of things subjective because we
Mhm.
thought it was clear what the show was trying to say in the first season. And we didn't help the audience into our thought process enough. And what you get is, sort of vagaries and slight sort of, a paganess about what we were actually trying to say. So this time we were like, I think the themes are just way much more surface level this season. I think it's much more obvious what the show is trying to say. And I think it's actually the show has improved massively, vastly as a result of that.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think it's in much starker relief now in the show. I think the themes and the overall like engine of the story, I think
Yeah.
is so clear in this season. But just to touch on something you said, it's a show about an industry that you both sorry, bad pun, but it's a show about an industry that you both worked in. Do you ever find yourselves in danger of maybe writing too much of yourselves or your experiences into the character or the story?
No, not at all. There's no danger of that. I mean, especially in season 1. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff in season 1 is either stuff that happened to me or Conrad, or was anecdotal to our experience, or adjacent to our experience, uh, or was based on stuff that we had heard. Season 2 is more about. I mean, season 2, frankly, is less about young people going into the workplace, and it's more about the themes that we've been touching on in this conversation.
Mhm.
I feel like obviously the theme of ambition and success at any cost is still prevalent, and that's something that me and Conrad, I guess, talk about and experience every day. But I feel like it does speak to that. But actually, I mean, this season I feel like because the story engine is so much more, I don't know, traditional. And
Mhm.
there's so much more there's so much more active decision making from the characters. There's so much
Mhm.
more like big stuff happening, shall we say,
Yeah.
that it's very different to my experience. I'll speak for myself of finance, where I spent my entire time at the bank kind of doing exactly what Hari and Gus were doing in the first episode, sitting behind the computer screen doing Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations. I was never chasing a client or going on a pheasant shoot in Wales. That was not in my T-loss for my job. But yeah, I feel like I think like the vibe of the thing that I think, I don't know, is sort of most relatable for me in the show is that unbridled ambition thing, that like making work your life thing, that the wanting to succeed, the slight sense of competition of people around you, the vibe of living in London at that age. That's stuff that I experienced, and I think I speak for Conrad, experienced in a similar way in our mid-20s at least.
The other, I mean, there's quite a basic, like obviously in season 1 we had the kind of the story engine of riff and like the kind of will they won't they make it. I mean, the thing, the show is not, I mean, we talked about it a bit in the room, but it has a Game of Thrones-y quality to it, the second season, because it's essentially about power, succession, and the way we always talked about like the end of episode 3, we always use the term Harper kills Eric. It's not like Harper does a trade that it was like Harper kills him. She takes his crown.
Mhm.
And like, I think those beats, they're buried in jargon and the fun, but the core adrenalized piece of the story could be, it has a genre-ish quality to it, which I think actually just really helps the show, because that's the watchability factor. So like, obviously the performances are good and all the window dressing and everything is very feels, it feels true to the world, which is cool. But the actual story mechanics of it are on some level the genre basic, and I mean that as a compliment to it. It didn't have that in season 1, and I think it really helps the show in season 2 to marry those things.
You know, it's very funny that you said Harper kills Eric in episode 3, because something that we loved was DVD saying execute in that scene, and I was like,
Yeah, but that's very deliberate, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's very
yeah.
deliberate.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, them both using that word is supposed to be like the two pretenders killing the king, right?
yeah. And obviously that shot of Eric alone.
Yeah, exactly. Like bereft and dead-eyed, staring into nothingness. I feel like the thing that I always find funny in that scene is that Rishi he does put up a slight bit of a resistance, but the resistance lasts about 10 seconds. And then he's like, actually, you know what? You're right. And it's something. It's I don't know if I've seen anyone talk about this, but it's a sort of theme in the way that Rishi operates. Like in season 1, he's like, Eric gets quietly let go through that NDA machination, and Rishi's like immediately like, oh, it's he's talking about Eric, but he's not. There's no like love lost. There's no like yearning for Eric. There's no like let's bring Eric back. There's no loyalty really. And then in season 2, he says, okay, well, has Eric signed on this? No, but we're gonna kill him anyway. And then, and then, I don't know if you haven't got to episode 6, but there's a sort of another reference to like the fact that like Eric's. I'm trying to work. You have seen that. There's another reference to the fact that Eric's gone and that Richie doesn't really give a fuck about it. And I feel like it speaks. I mean, I mean, in our construction of it, I always thought Eric and Rishi are quite good friends, but it just speaks to the world that like, long as the friendship is not as important as the fact that like Harper's brought in another piece of business which is going to usurp Phelim as what seems to be the only client on the desk.
Yeah. Before we talk about episode 5 specifically, I just have a general question about your approach to this season. Because when Eyo and I spoke about the premiere, there were 2 things that kind of jumped out at us, and I would like to just pick your brains or your thinking about doing it. I think the first one was the amount of time you chose to jump the story. And because I think we were like, oh, these characters have changed, but all these changes make sense to the characters we left in 108. We kind of see how it happened, but these changes are still clear. And then the second thing will be just your inclusion of COVID in the story. Was that as difficult as I expect, or was that always going to happen?
Good question. I mean, the first one is, I mean, those 2 things are linked, right? Because we thought, okay, a big time jump would feel. I mean, I just love those as a storytelling tool in TV and anything really, literature, everything. I thought it would be a good way to just push the characters on. Practically, the characters, like, they look older. We had 2 years in between the 2 show seasons. We had COVID in between, so everything was slowed down from a production standpoint. And then the idea about including COVID was obviously it was a natural break. It allowed us to make that jump. We could suggest that everyone was at home for that year that you didn't see them, the year that you would never want to see them in this job because it would be incredibly boring. And we didn't want to make an 8-hour drama about COVID, but also we didn't want to pay lip service to it by just having like people in masks and using hand sanitizer. So we thought, okay, what's the most interesting version of a COVID drama? And it's the way that people have been impacted by spending a year by themselves. So obviously all the characters have reacted to it very differently. Harper has spent a year in total isolation away from people, having to sit with this sort of thing that she did at the end of season 1. Eric has spent a lot of time with his family, probably the most time he spent with them in the last 20 years. And he's feeling existential as a result. Yasmin has spent a lot of time with her rich friends at house parties and abroad, sneaking out of the country and doing a lot of drugs and gaining confidence as a result. And she comes back into work with that confidence as a new tool. And Robert has been sitting on the. I mean, I've seen some people commenting on the way that Robert has done a sort of 180. It's really funny, you guys. I remember listening to your podcast and you saying like a sober Robert. There's no way they do that. And sending it to Konrad and being like, okay, well, these guys they're going to be disappointed.
How wrong we
exactly what we've done.
Yeah, I was like,
at the end, and then someone said, God, how has Robert matured so quickly? But it isn't a real, it's not a sitting down too hard in that style. It's not like he's totally matured. He was told that by his superior after securing his job that he was a cokehead and that he was worthless. And like, I think if you're a sensitive soul like Robert, that happens to you. Then you go back to, they announce a lockdown, you sit by yourself for a year. and you stew on that, and you realize that actually maybe I am worth this. And what's the biggest shortcut to feeling better about myself? Okay, well, I'll just blame the fact that I was reliant too much on substances, and I'll wipe those out of my life. So like, in the roundabout way, it was the COVID was it was a really useful instrument in making and pushing character. I think it was we didn't want it, and also like again like we got really lucky with the idea of like the inciting incident of the second season being come back to work, because obviously that's something that's so prevalent in the culture at the moment, and obviously workplaces that were so pro work from home, and I was saying actually, you know what, we actually want everyone to come back into the office now, and I feel like that's really acute in the finance industry. So we got lucky with that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking about Robert, he does have a brief stint of sobriety in season 1. I mean, it lasts like a week after Harper calls him an addict. But so it made sense. We didn't think it was going to happen, but it definitely made sense story wise,
100%.
which is a great way to talk about. I mean, I think Eyo and I are both on board that we love your use of COVID this season. I think we've watched a lot of shows that have used COVID. We've not really liked a lot of them. So I think this was that we like how you're using it. So that's I mean, another just congrats.
Thank you.
Speaking about Robert, obviously I mentioned that this was a depressing episode, being episode 5. If you listen to our episode on the premiere, I've been dreading this relapse. I think I even predicted that it happened in episode 5. So I guess for me. I don't know. But this is the first time you're writing this season. Both of you are writing this season since the brilliant episode 2. So just as a general question, I apologize for the generality of this question, but what are you most proud of in this episode?
Wow, good question.
I mean, look, episode 5 was we knew when we were breaking the story that it was a huge risk for the show, in the sense that it leaves the banking precinct. There's not a very big financial spine going through the episode. It delves back into the histories of the characters. It's a lot about parents. It's a lot about looking back rather than looking forward. These are all things that are big red flags, I think, in TV story. So we knew that it was a big swing, and it was one of those ones that actually, out of all of the episodes, Caleb did an incredible job directing it, but it took a lot of wrangling in the edit because of quite how emotional a lot of it is, as you guys say, and the balance between, and I mean, there's still some incredibly, and what is good, I think, is there's still some incredibly funny moments and some incredibly adrenalized moments. There's clubbing and there's all this sort of stuff, so it feels kind of nicely balanced. The Harper JD component is obviously been a kind of this teased spectral presence throughout the whole show, and casting that character and what their interaction would look like on camera and what it would say about Harper was not. It's not as reductive as a simple key to her character, but it's a lot. Those scenes were very dialogue heavy. There were not that many of them. There were actually 2 big scenes, and they required a huge amount from the actors because they're incredibly emotive. I mean, I don't know what Mickey's favorite. You're most proud of, Mick. I mean, I would say the way those 2 scenes turned out. I would say, and I actually think maybe one of the strongest scenes in the whole series, and maybe in my top 3 scenes, is Robert trying to recruit Daphne's character when he's on cocaine, because I feel like that switch in his character and what he's like under the influence of drugs and alcohol again, and the kind of darkness that immediately sort of sinks over him, I think maybe speaks to a lot about the theme of the show in a very sort of distinct unit of screen time. So I think I'd probably say that bit. What would you say, Mick?
Yeah, I'd say that I think that's probably my favorite scene in the episode. I really I think Robert's story is it's not the lightest in terms of tone, but in terms of actual screen time, it's probably the lightest part of the episode. But I think it's actually in an episode with a lot of big emotional shit in it, I think it actually is subtly the most powerful bit. I feel that it just I'm proud of again, I think I'm almost repeating what Konrad said, but like it's so much stuff in that episode could have gone wrong especially if we didn't have the right actors. Like Harper's brother, that would have been a disaster if someone that wasn't able to pull that off. Like it's a very, very big ask for an actor to come in and do basically just like from go from 0 to 100 in terms of their emotional range, and have to play that. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that fight between them. I'm proud of the clubbing scenes. Like Caleb, I mean, when we interviewed Caleb for the job, he was like, this is the stuff that he's like, I've obviously he never directed television before, but we gave him this episode. Obviously, he obviously did episode 6 as well, which is a trading floor heavy episode. But this was the first episode that is really totally off the trading floor. We thought it would be a great run for Caleb to try and to do that. And I think he nailed. There's so many different weird spaces in this episode as well. There's Berlin, there's the clubbing scene, there's like walking around the spires of Oxford, there's like restaurants, there's weird Berlin suburbs. Like there's a lot of different stuff to play with, and I think that Caleb just like brought some. It's like it's emotionally intense and very heart wrenching, I think, in places, but also has a sort of like subtlety and kind of quietness that I think a lot of the other episodes don't have, and I feel like he nailed it in that time.
Just to flip the format for a second, guys. And we can ask you a question. What did because me and Mickey are so close to the material that it actually, obviously it has you write it, you film it, it's such a long process. It's very hard to, and it's not to say it doesn't have emotional power for us anymore, because of course it does. But I wonder, with the kind of cold eyes of having just watched it and never not seen how the sausage was made, I wonder what you kind of felt when it cut to black, like in terms of. I wonder what it made you feel about Harper, for example, or what it made you rethink about her or Robert or any of those guys.
I think, first of all, I can tell you that when it cuts to Robert on the floor, passed out, I literally said Jesus. Like, I literally said out loud, Jesus. But when it cuts to black, it's depression. I was just like, I was feeling a pit of sadness. And I think I'm very intrigued to know, I mean, we wanted to ask you, but I think we'd rather not, just to know how this interaction really shades Harper going forward. I like that shot of them in the lift with Eric in the back. Eric almost has this almost demure meekness to him in the back of the lift. And again, these are things I'm like, what is happening here? And obviously Harper repeating her brother's words to DVD. It's just like, okay, it's not anything, I don't think it's anything that we didn't know about Harper in terms of, maybe it's a bit more cold coming from her brother.
No, I think look, the episodes go some way to explaining why Harper is the way she is, why she's so focused on work above all things else, other things, why she is scared of opening herself up to people, why she doesn't want to pursue, emotionally laden relationships. I think that stuff is all in the character before that. This is just sort of shining a light on it for the audience. We've seen her upset in a work context. We've seen her have panic attacks because of her work, but we've never actually seen her emotionally react to something to do with her personal life. Like all the time she's been upset in the show, it's because she's been unmoored in a work context, or like you see her being angry at Todd in episode 5 of season 1, but it's because he might have done something that reflects badly on her in front of her clients. Like nothing to do with her work, her life. This is the first time you've seen her like bawling her eyes out about the fact that someone who she loves is rejecting her. And I think it's heart wrenching, but it's all stuff that I think if you've been watching the show, you imagine Harper has inside of her.
It's also the clearest. It's the clearest, I think, explanation. I mean, it's the clearest. What's the word? Evocation of one of the big themes of the show, which is that me and me. We talk about people always ask us what it's about, and it's like one of our big answers to that question is the price of ambition. And I think you see it across all of the stories. So you see like Robert's relationship with his mother and this idea of trying to get into this incredible university before she died. You see it in Venetia talking about the pressure she felt from her immigrant mother and how it made her basically sick. You see the girl who's about to be recruited into the bank, who's basically put all this pressure on herself and sees herself in Venetia. You see JD, who's maybe the purest form of this, who was basically about to be an elite sports star and decided that he was going to opt out of that life, even though he was very close to it because of the cost he had to bear, both the pressure from him and Harper's mother and the pressure he put upon himself. And he basically walked away from it. And then you see Harper basically this is all laid out for her, and she opts into that thing rather than opting out of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's I think that whole, the kind of this need for this upward thrust in life, and this kind of like this need for constantly more and more and more of, and this like ultimately the emptiness on some level of this kind of this high level of achievement, I think is a key part of the episode.
I think how also there's sort of the sort of zero sum game between success in your work and success in your personal life is something that is unconscious to Harper until this episode. Whereas like when she, that moment in the lift at the end, she's literally saying, I cannot have a personal relationship if I'm going to be successful here. It's like, and DVD, but DVD has, he's none the wiser about what's going on. He's like, okay, well, this girl I'm seeing has gone on a business trip. She comes back and she's like, hardened beyond any I could ever imagine. And that's her in that lift. That's her being like, okay, well, I'm closing myself totally off from the idea of a fulfilling relationship in this bank or outside of it. And actually, I'm just going to knuckle down and do my work.
That coincidence, it's a very deliberate coincidence that obviously that Eric is coming from the Pierpoint, mental health floor that he told Harper to go to earlier in the season. And that's why he looks meek, because at that moment, the door opens, he steps in from this floor that he would have never gone to 6 months ago. He sees the woman he used to the woman who used to sort of be his mentee. Yeah. He feels incredibly vulnerable in that moment. And she sees his vulnerability, and that meekness, Ken really understood that. He looks like a sort of shell of himself. Yeah. And she sees that, and she's disgusted by it. Rather which is really dark. Yeah. Rather than ask him how he is or whatever, she's just like, that weakness is not something that I'm, or that emotional vulnerability is just not something I'm willing to show. She never wants to be anymore.
That, does she?
No, she doesn't. This is not a spoiler at all, because in episode 6 they have a conversation, and he suggests that he might have been talking to someone professionally. And literally, there's a bit of acting that Mahala does, which is just like, she like winces almost at the thought of that. It's like, why would he do that, dude? Like, that's not.
Why would you even tell me that?
Exactly. The way the sort of weird analog I think of it is like the Pierpoint Services floor is like going into a fucking pawn shop in Pierpoint. It's like people are like dark glasses. Like I need professional help. I don't want any of my colleagues to know that.
Oh my god, I feel
that's so funny.
I feel like I should retire from podcasting about industry, because I didn't even realize that was the floor he was on. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It's just me saying it now. I was like, oh.
We got to say it in every interview because it's not clear.
I just thought it was his work. It was his workflow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That explains a lot, actually. Yeah. And
it's really that was a really difficult thing to do, because we basically knew people would miss it. So if you actually watch the shot again, there is a big sign that says Pierpoint Services, which is obviously quite an oblique thing. I think, Mick, did we put the audio in of it saying it as well?
I can't remember. I think, or if someone's saying Pierpoint Services, I think we did actually.
Yeah,
we did. It's not clear.
No, it's not.
We
clear.
had in the version. There was deleted scenes for episode 1 where Harper actually went up to that floor and didn't really engage with it. But you see her in that floor. She actually uses the Rycan app, which Pierpoint have used or to talk to a therapist. And obviously because it's Harper, she doesn't want to engage. But so when we filmed it, we thought we had seen Pierpoint Services, and we thought it'd be clearer when people see it again in episode 5.
Yeah, well, I guess with the conversation they have in episode 6, it probably make it to highlight that was Pierpoint Services, that he's been seeing someone. So even if you miss it in episode 5 and episode 6, you do it. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I was gonna clear out some space for Mickey and I talk about Arsenal and Gabriel Jesus, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
I gave up. I gave up on Arsenal quite a long time ago. I had this thing. Konrad saw me at my very worst while supporting Arsenal. Probably.
Oh no, I completely understand, because I took the year off last season. Because I was like, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're not a good fan." I was like, "I'm. This is my mental health. Pierpoint Services. I do not want like this for this year."
The thing I always tell Mickey though is that football is so cyclical that
you're a Liverpool fan. You can say that.
I'm a Liverpool fan, so it's kind of like it's like Arsenal, and like Mickey's got a young daughter as well, who's my goddaughter, and like Arsenal. I think Arsenal will be good again in the next 5 years. I have no doubt about that actually. And I think once they qualify for the Champions League, I think Mick will be taking that.
I think
to
so.
the
I'm saying that. I actually think I'm going to Arsenal Spurs in October, which will be my first game in absolutely ages.
Yeah, just dip your toe in. Just don't go on podcast telling people that you're no longer an Arsenal fan, because then when you do come back, it's a whole problem.
Exactly.
So
delete that bit. Delete that bit because I want to get free tickets as well.
I'll bleep it. I'll bleep it out. I'll definitely bleep it out.
Steve McQueen, the director, said something about his love of Spurs, and he was like, it was so all encompassing. And it was something that I could not control, which affected my life so much and they were so bad for so long. It was causing me so much depression that he just basically was like, I can't watch them anymore. So he retired from watching them totally.
I tried. I did a year. I was like, this year I'm just gonna be away focusing on my own thing, and then hopefully I come back better. But
it takes up a lot of emotional bandwidth, I would say. Even if they're good, like Liverpool have obviously been great since Klopp joined, and it's a fucking undertaking supporting them, because you have to go. I have to go to games. I have to watch every. It's a big part of your emotional.
Konrad, it's basically Konrad's second job.
I mean, look,
Konrad, you like the sort of wilderness years of Liverpool. You were still in it, but then you were really rewarded by Klopp and then that.
Yeah, I did. I had my nadir supporting Liverpool was went to we were playing Swansea, and it was just at the start of the Brendan Rodgers era or something, and it was like a 12:30 on a Saturday, and it was pissing down with rain, and I was in I was in Swansea, and when Joe Cole was warming up on the touchline, and I was thinking, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like, this game is on TV. I paid over the odds to be here, obviously, because I can't get tickets through traditional means. And it was a disaster.
So well, you sent me a picture of your lunch that day as well, and it was like it was like these chicken nuggets and like a bit of salad, and it was so fucking sad.
Konrad, I get free tickets from work from time to time for Liverpool games because my company supports them. So maybe one of these days I'll hook you up. Yeah,
hook me up. Yeah. No, it's as Mickey says. I paid my penance, and then we were rewarded for a bit.
Now, so
and then while you guys are off watching Liverpool, Mickey and I will just be depressed about Arsenal. It sounds like balance. It just sounds like balance to me.
No, you guys are gonna have I think Arsenal are gonna have a really good season. I can feel it.
Well,
I have one question that I have to ask. It's something that I made allusion to in one of the first episodes. Is Danny, so is DVD based on Drake?
On Drake?
Yeah.
He's based on Aubrey Graham, not Drake.
Fair enough.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's Aubrey from Degrassi. Yeah, exactly.
That's the Degrassi era, Drake.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that you did not break Eyo's illusion on that. He can just go on that for the rest of the season because he really wants that to be the truth. Guys, thank you so much for your time. You've spent way longer than you needed to. Thank you for this show. I'm excited to watch the last few episodes, and then look, it's beyond an open invitation. If you ever want to come back, if you're bored and you want to talk about the show, I want people to know about how much you love making the show. You're here. You can always come back if you want to. If by mistake, Mickey, you start watching Arsenal and you want to vent, you can come back. Konrad, you're not allowed to come back and talk about Liverpool because we don't support that. But anyway, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for your time. And then I think we're so excited to talk about the last few episodes of the season. And
thank you, guys. It's a pleasure talking to you. We love your enthusiasm for the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay,
thank you so much.
Bye.